welcome to Life of Love. We have a great program planned for you today. I'm here with a dear soul, Troy Hadeed, and he is a world traveler. He's been in the spirit of love and freedom and questioning the narrative and, just looking for the underdog his whole life. And he's had a lot of adventures. So I can't wait for him to share some of his insights and just absorb what he's going to bring. Please welcome Troy Hadeed. Thanks for being here. I can't wait to share this space with you.
Yeah, hey Julie, thanks for having me. It is an honor, and yeah, I'm really happy to be here. And I would say everything is on the table. I'm an open book, so you can dig wherever you want to dig, ask whatever you want to ask. I'm here for you guys.
Well, I know your passion is yoga, and you also have seminars. You offer training for yoga teachers, and you're in Trinidad, right?
Yeah, and my passion is yoga, Julie. That is the vehicle I've been using for the last 15, 20 years to really kind of get a message across or help people do work. But it's so much bigger than that for me. And I remember at my first teacher training, which took me 15 years to do my first to host my first teacher training, which was this year. And I remember halfway through, I had a moment where I was like, teacher training was amazing, absolutely mind-blowing, right? And I've been part of many, but this was phenomenal. And I had a moment where I was like, I don't want to teach yoga anymore. Because I had a moment where, for me, I realized that what I want to do, what my entire life is crafted around, is around talking about God and talking about love and reconnecting people to their understanding of God and what it means to love. And so I had a moment where I was like, I don't want to teach asana anymore. I don't want to teach postures anymore. And then I realized that actually teaching yoga and asana is just the vehicle upon which I get to talk about God. And I get to talk about what it means to embody yoga and live from a place of love. So yes, yoga is extremely dear to me. But it is a vehicle to something so much bigger.
I love that. To me, when you're in touch with God, you're in touch with energy, because God gives us love energy. It's unconditional love energy. And so when you're open to energy, when you respond to something like yoga or breath work, you're closer to God. So like you said, it's a vehicle, and the people that are drawn to that, somehow they get to experience God on a different plane, and it's really great to share that experience. With your permission, I'd like to share a quote that you have on Instagram.
Sure.
It touched me. Without freedom, the fear of judgment or punishment often guides our actions. And as long as we are guided by fear, those actions can never be born of love.
Yeah. That's actually from my book, I think. A book that isn't published yet.
Oh, Popcorn in My Pocket?
Yeah. Now, the name might actually change. Who knows?
Oh.
I've had a few. I'm working with a few published authors and editors in the final development, and they have suggested a name change, and I'm not opposed to it, but I like the name as it is now. But the content of the book is it's very real. And it's very eye and heart opening. Like Popcorn in My Pocket has a very light, flowery, playful feel to it. And this book isn't really playful. This book is I tell a lot of stories about life in a very open, honest, authentic, vulnerable way. But it's a very serious book. It's a book that can change our lives and change our world, So I do understand that the name may need to change a little bit. But that is one of my favorite quotes, and it is It's very dear to me because, a lot of what we think is love is actually we do things out of. Let me explain it this way, maybe. I had a conversation with someone the other day, and we were discussing God and the characteristics of God or divinity. And I was asking him, would you prefer that, do you think God would prefer that we served him out of fear or out of love? Like if we do something out of the fear of judgment or the fear of punishment, then that alone is we're doing something out of the need for self-preservation. We're not actually acting from a place of love. We're acting from a place of fear. And very often we disguise fear as love. But if we really dig down to it, we realize that we're showing up from a place of love out of fear, and that we're governed by actual fear, not by love. Does that make sense?
It really does. It really does. And that's been the hardest thing for me lately, is looking at the way people will give up their freedom for security. And that it scares me, and I know that's fear, but to me that we have to hold on to our freedom so that
Yeah.
we can be in love, that we don't have to, like, if you can't breathe and feel air, but you're willing to give up your breath because you're scared of offending somebody else, and the whole idea that you need the government to tell you what you need to feel good, or that you're going to rely on someone else to dictate basically how you can be healthy. That
Yeah.
to me is it's a slippery slope. And so part of my mission is to activate people to find their divinity so they can be solid in what they know is love for them, and define it for themselves, because it's different for everybody. And that's the
Yeah.
scary thing, because you got to do the soul searching to find what it means to you. It's not the handbag, it's not the white wedding gown, it's not the house on the hill with a white picket fence. Like that's not love.
Yeah.
And to say I'm going to define it for myself, that's a scary proposition for a lot of
Yeah.
people. I think they'd rather just have a template and just pop the things in their template, and it's all laid out, and God's just gonna, you're gonna say this prayer 5 times a day, and you're gonna go to church, and you're gonna raise your kids in a certain religion, and everything's gonna work out. But that doesn't resonate with me, and I think that it's scary, because people become, and I say this a lot, they become zombies because they're not
Yeah.
authentic.
Yeah. There's a lot of conditioning, and that conditioning is generational, right? But it's so funny this is coming up, because we're conditioned by these narratives about what we should believe and what our lives should look like. But what we also have to be aware of, and we're also conditioned by the way each one has our own understanding of love, because we've been loved in a different way, right? So my understanding of love might be conditional. It might not actually be what love actually looks like at all. And we have to start to look at that as well. But as we look to dissolve conditioning and dissolve the narratives, what I often invite people to look at is, very often in our drive, our attachment, or our purpose to dissolve this conditioning, in that there is conditioning. So it's so tricky, because our identity attaches so much to being someone that might fight his system or dissolve his system or dissolve his narrative, that we don't realize that we have been conditioned by a narrative that tells us we must dissolve the social narrative. So it's so tricky because often we, in our drive to dissolve conditioning, we have been conditioned, and we have to be honest enough to look at that and be like, what's happening here? And what one example might be, someone might be anti-government or anti-system or whatever you want to call it, right? Capitalization and all this stuff. And we may not agree with that. But it doesn't mean everything from a government or everything from a system is bad or wrong. Right? So if we get caught up in that narrative, then that too is conditioning. If we don't have the ability in every moment to stop and look at what we think we believe and question why. Is this really what I believe, and where is this coming from? You know?
Yes. And that's up to the individual. Like, you can give consent. You can say, yes, I really like to have a road to drive on. I'm going to pay my property taxes so that we can have good roads. And that's something totally different from, if somebody like throws money at something and never asked you like that. So that questioning, like, okay, so what am I getting into, and what's really going on here? And right, there's no, it's no this or that. It's whatever is good for you and your heart.
Yeah.
So how did you know at a young age that you were close to Jesus?
Wow. Well, that's your first. I've been doing interviews for a long time, Julie. That's your first time I've ever got that question. Well, I grew up in a Catholic home, so I guess that's where it all began, right? And but even from a really young age, and I went to Catholic school, but even from a really young age, I would always questioning, like I always felt close to Christ. Like I tell people, for me, it doesn't matter whether Christ actually walked this earth or not. It doesn't matter whether he really existed or not. Because what he embodied and what he taught is what matters. Whether he's a legend or a story or was a real man, to me, it's all irrelevant, because I think the message he carries is real. And the teachings he carries and he brought to this world is real. And I remember from a young age, I would look at, now I'm not trying to bash religion at all. That's what I'm here to do. I'm just telling my story. But I remember from a young age looking at what I was being told from a church, and then looking at what Jesus taught. And there was a bit of a contradiction. I was like, Jesus wouldn't teach this. And I remember being at confirmation, and I remember actually walking out of confirmation or being kicked out of confirmation because I was telling a teacher, I was like, no way, dude. It's like, no way. This doesn't make sense. And so I've always, to me, Christ has been the ultimate embodiment of love. And even at 42 years old, to me, he is my greatest teacher. He is the ultimate yogi and the ultimate embodiment of yoga. So I would have to say that it's just something I don't ever remember not being close to Christ, not being close to Jesus. And I my entire life I have dug into what he actually taught, what his life was actually like. And I always say, Julie, I think it's really important because for generations we have been told who God is, what God wants of us, and what God looks like. And I don't think that's right. because you can't come to know God and know divinity by just repeating a story or narrative. That's a very personal thing. To be told of God and to know God is two very different things. And I like to create space, and I encourage everyone to create space for each individual to cultivate their own unique relationship to God, to redefine their own relationship to God. And I would never allow anyone to tell me what my relationship to God is supposed to look like. And I would never do that to anyone else. And I think it's important that we allow that space. And before I throw it back to you, I will say this. People have asked me, well, do you think it's important that we use the word God? Can we not talk about God as Gaia or Spirit or Mother Nature or whatever? And of course we can. Each one of us has our own relationship to God, and we can call divinity whatever we want. I don't think divinity really cares. Divinity is not egotistic, right? But for me, it's also important that we use the word God. Because if we look at history, anyone looking at history, if you look at history and you can't acknowledge the wrongs and misalignment that has been done in the name of God, then you're not really looking. Because that's obvious. And I have seen so many people move away from God because of that. And I think it's really important to also use the word God, because that's the only way we can correct the wrongs and the misalignments that have been done in the name of God. And I as an individual, I am not willing to separate myself. If I choose to use a different name for divinity or a different name for God, in essence, what I'm doing is creating more separation. I'm saying that my God is different, my belief in divinity is different, and that those who believe in God, it's a different kind of God to what I believe. So for me, it's important for us to use the word God and redefine what God actually means, rather than allow anyone to rob us of that relationship. And I've seen that happen so much times, where people are just turned away from God completely. And I think it's important to allow space where people can come back to that.
I agree. That resonates with me so much. Our stories have some parallels. I was raised in a Catholic school, and I ended up calling the nuns hypocrites. And I demanded that my mother take me out of Catholic school. I said she was wasting her money. And I went to a public school, and it all came out of me being assaulted on the way to the bus. And I was like, well, I'm going to take this like Jesus would. He loves his enemies, and I wouldn't fight back. And the nuns told me I should have fought back. And I was like, no, Jesus wouldn't. That's not what Jesus teaches us. There was the lack of compassion. To me, God and Jesus were these loving, compassionate beings. And how can these nuns be married to God and Jesus? They essentially are married to the spirit of Jesus. How could they act in such heartless ways? Like, that didn't resonate with me, and it bothered me. It was maybe a year and a half ago, I invited Jesus back into my heart, because I had gone through a part. I was doing, like, experimenting with religion and my faith.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jesus, I'm inviting you back in my heart. And I tell you what, Troy, that feeling when I invited Jesus back into my heart was just, it's hard to describe. It was like the best hug I ever got. And I knew that was, Jesus in my presence. And so I honor and respect your comments about we need to we need to take this ball of war and hate and all these things that have been done in the name of God, deception and all these things. We need to take them and put them, transpose them, like send that energy somewhere else, because we have so much more to give. We have so much more to give back to God, to make it right. So I love that.
It's important to note that Jesus was also a rebel. Jesus was a revolutionary. And love isn't always flowers and rainbows. Sometimes love is fierce. And, Jesus got angry and Jesus fought back sometimes. So it's not, to understand that love, to me, to embody love and live from a place of love, we have to look at the intention behind the action, not the action itself.
Mm-hmm.
The very same action can be driven by love or it can be driven by fear. So we have to look at what is our intention, what is driving us. Because too often people think, yes, love and compassion, flowers, rainbows, bunnies, butterflies. But love is also fiery and fierce, and sometimes walking away from a situation, or sometimes looking at someone in the face and standing up fiercely is also love,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree. It reminds me of the story in the Bible where Jesus was in the temple and he threw the tables up, the money tables. He threw them in the air, and there's so few stories in the Bible where he is like demonstrating that, or we just don't hear him.
Yeah.
I honor that you have brought that up, because it's true, and that's the other thing about intention, because that gives you freedom to be yourself. Because if you're coming from pure intention, then an intention of helping, for the highest good, and you've asked to be shown the highest good, and it doesn't work out, then you can question, you can say, well, I regret that it didn't go the way I wanted it to, that it wasn't received the way it could have been. I regret that I wouldn't do this again. But there's no shame, because your heart was in the right place. Your intention was there.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing to me, to just for the release of shame. Like, shame has no purpose.
Yeah.
Make it regret. Make it be like, I didn't want it to happen this way. I'm really sorry. And I would never make that choice again. But there's no reason to beat yourself up and have shame. So that's a big theme for me, is, that compassion, that, you don't have to own somebody else's suffering. Maybe they need to do some self-reflection and understand why they were triggered by something you did, because that's another thing, when you're forgiving someone, you're really doing it for yourself, because for some reason you let them get to you, and you have to forgive yourself for being in a vulnerable state where you let someone else affect you so much you have to forgive them. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, it'd be different if they cut off your arm, right? That's a different kind of forgiveness, I think. But would you want to talk about your perspective on forgiveness a little bit?
Oh, I would love to. Like it said, Julie, I could talk for a long time on a lot of different things. But forgiveness for me is so important. I think part of our problem when it comes to forgiveness, part of the issue, but I think we have to start to see one another as beyond our human identity. And the only way we can do that is to see ourselves beyond our human identity. I always say that the world is in an identity crisis, in that we look at our bodies and we're told, this is who I am. My name is Troy. This is my body. And when we do that, Now I'm gonna connect some dots here. I know this might sound like woo woo wah wah, but I'm gonna connect some dots. But when I identify with my body, I also identify everyone else with their bodies. So that when someone does something that hurts me, I feel like it's a personal attack. But in reality, it's not. It doesn't matter. And I know this is very hard for some in a lot of situations to entertain, right? Because in the human experience, some things are extremely painful and cause immense suffering beyond what is even imaginable. But if we can see beyond the human experience and body, then we acknowledge that there's something more happening, that we are all here to learn and grow and walk through a certain curriculum. So that when someone does something to me, I can now acknowledge it's not personal, because we are all a product of our conditioning and our experiences. And it's easy to say that someone should know better. That's a very easy thing to say. But to know better is a privilege. To know better means that we had someone in our lives to love us and teach us, show us right from wrong, and to show us how to do better. But here's the reality, Julie. Not everyone had that. You know, I always say that my biggest privilege, beyond my skin color, being born into a family that was well off, beyond my gender, beyond all of that, my biggest privilege is being loved. I know what it is to be loved. But I now acknowledge that not everyone has that. So how can I dare look at someone's actions and judge them for it? Because they are simply a product of their experiences and their conditioning. So much like what they do to me is not personal, it also would be wrong of me to hold their actions against them as if it were personal. It was really who they are. They are not their actions. There's something below those actions, below a human body, human experience, and there's a divine soul and spirit inside there. And that's what I need to see. That's what I need to interact with. That's what I need to love. I can love someone without loving their actions.
To me, that's the definition of unconditional love. That's cosmic love. Recognizing that's the soul struggling.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we see that, forgiveness is no longer an option. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. Granted, we have human emotions. We are in a human body, and we have human emotions that we need to feel and we need to move through. And we will feel pain, and we will feel hurt, and we will feel suffering. But eventually, once we can understand that, forgiveness is inevitable. Inevitable. It's not an option. It may take us a day, it may take us a year, it may take us a decade, but it is inevitable.
That's just absolutely amazing. I just love, I mean, you talk about unconditional love, but the way you described it is, it's activating. So thank you. Thank you for sharing it like that.
Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome.
It really turned me on to that whole idea as we're here on soul missions, and everybody, you know, the idea that we've agreed to this assignment. We've agreed to certain complications. We've agreed to certain conflicts. We've agreed to work through pain. We volunteered to come here. When that's huge. No, I mean when I read that book, I have it right here. It's Brian Weiss. messages from the masters. When I read this book, I was like, holy shit, now it makes sense. Like, I'm like, wow, all these people have all these stories of past lives and our soul purpose. And, it's not all these people can have the same experience and it be completely wrong. There's more than what they've been telling us. So,
yeah. And it's so beautiful and it's so important, Julie. And I often describe it like this. It's like, not only are we in school, not only is the human experience like spiritual school, and not only do we each have our own curriculum to walk, but we are part of one another's curriculum. And there's another quote I posted recently that says that our mistakes are actually divine intelligence. And that sometimes we are being manipulated like puppets. And the moment in which we fail and we know we knew better and we did not do better, the moment in which we are overcome with guilt and shame, those moments created an opportunity for somebody else to learn and grow. Like when we hurt if I were to hurt you, Julie, part of your curriculum is now to learn forgiveness. So I create an opportunity for you to learn forgiveness. So sometimes, you talked about like our humanness and shame, and we have to also own our humanness. We will make mistakes. We will screw up, sometimes bigger than we would ever hope to imagine. But even our screw-ups, even our shortcomings, there's divine intelligence in that as well. Not only is that part of our own curriculum, but we're also part of someone else's curriculum and creating opportunities for them to learn and grow and transform.
Yes. And I've been diving into the Hawkins scale of consciousness, and the one that really, I loved it. I loved the lower vibration is closure. The higher vibration is openness. So sometimes we screw up. We want forgiveness. We want to be like, I'm sorry. What can I do to make it up to you? Tell me what I can do. And sometimes people just want to be mad at you, and you have to be at peace with that. You have to say, I wish you the highest good. I regret that it happened. But you can't, that was something I had to learn, is that not all things are going to be wrapped up in a bow. There's not going to be a resolution. Sometimes you just have to leave it open and wish for that person to come back to you if it ever happens, or just be at peace. If you can be at peace and just give everything you can. You didn't mean it, or you acted against your instincts because you decided not to for whatever reason. You had that lesson to learn.
Yeah, and sometimes loving someone means you have to be willing to lose them. Sometimes it's a mistake. Sometimes you screw up and you have to let it go. Or sometimes you intentionally know you have to say something that someone's not going to like, and that you might lose them if you say it. But at the same time, that is going to project them into their period of growth and transformation, or at least give them that opportunity. And to love someone is to be willing to lose them, if that comes, Comes back to freedom. We started with freedom, and now we're back to freedom, right?
Freedom.
It's like loving someone is giving them that freedom. It's not manipulating them and telling them what they have to do or what they have to say. It's about giving them that freedom to be who they are in any moment,
And be free. I mean, to me that's a cornerstone of this message, is that be free to love the way your heart's so your heart can sing, and stand up for what your values are, because we're all just here trying to figure this out and learn our lessons. And so just be free to explore and be curious about it, because it's a beautiful gift, and every breath is a divine gift.
Yeah. And also to question everything we think we know. Because sometimes we're captive to our own beliefs. We've identified with an opinion or a belief so strongly that it locks us into a box. So that's another form of captivity. And to really be free is also to have the courage to question everything we think we know. Because what is true today might not be true tomorrow. The whole world once thought the world was flat. Some people still think it's flat today, and maybe it is flat. Who knows? But it's about the freedom to question, right?
Right. I know. I love to hear what the flat earth people are saying. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Like, if there is an ice wall around the whole earth, I mean, I love to enter those conversations. I'm sorry. I have no judgment.
Yeah.
I love to let my mind wander. I'm like, well, why does a rainbow start at one side and then go to the other side? Why doesn't it just keep going? Like, I don't know. Does it?
Yeah.
Where does a rainbow stop and end? That kind of stuff is. I just love
Yeah.
to ponder those things. And so
I always say one of the things that we know for sure, if you're really paying attention, one of the things you know in absolute for sure is that we know nothing.
I know we've been.
You look around sometimes, and I live in the forest, and sometimes I look at nature and I look at these giant trees and the ocean. I'm like, we are so clueless. Like, what is this human experience? We are so absolutely clueless. And I don't know if we'll ever know in our bodies, if we'll ever really figure it out. Maybe there's nothing to actually figure out, But I just like to try to remind myself that you know nothing.
Right.
Whatever you think you know, it's probably going to change at some point. You don't really know anything,
So to me, that's validation for living your authentic free self. If you just get this one shot, why not stay in a vibration where you're supporting people around you, where you're living with a light heart? You go through struggles, but you decide not to stay there. You ask for help. You connect.
Yeah.
So that's what I know. That's why I'm here, is to help elevate and show people love. Because, like you said, I've been entitled to resources. I'm entitled to where my parents were loving. They're still absolutely loving and supportive of all my craziness. So that's my purpose, is to illuminate some of it that I've been gifted with. And then to understand my shortcomings and accept myself for that too.
Yeah, of course. And on that note, Julie, it's so important to point out, because I think there's something happening in the world that we need to identify, and we need to move on, especially with regards to spiritual journey, or the journey to realization. So many of us, we're looking at what we're doing that is in alignment. And we're looking at the areas of our life in which we live from a place of love. And we share it on social media, and we talk about it, and we write about it. And it's beautiful. But that's not where our growth and transformation lies. Our growth and transformation lies in looking at the areas of our life where we don't show up from a place of love, where we're disconnected. And if we don't have the courage to identify that, we're going to limit our growth and transformation. We're going to limit our realization. And we have to start identifying that and talking about it, and making accountability so much more accessible. Because if every time somebody I is accountable and acknowledges that they did something wrong, we punish them and we hang them, then no one's going to want to be accountable anymore. So I often say that we need to make accountability accessible, so that when someone steps into a space in which they own something, they own a mistake, and they own their accountability, it's almost like there's a subtle clap. There should be a subtle applause, because that shows that someone is really committed to growth and transformation, and they're at least trying.
Right.
Yeah.
The messy stuff is what the goo of life is.
Yeah.
I have noticed a lot more people showing, like, on Instagram, they'll have little clips of their husbands messing up or them messing up, or like, I've noticed there's a lot more people just being real, and I don't know if that's like it's definitely staged too, but there's a lot of reality TV gets messy, and so maybe we're accepting that more. But I do think that I write about that in my book too, the compassion for the fallen, and Jesus taught us that. The the prodigal son, Mary, who was a prostitute, Magdalene. Judgment's a rough place to be. You judge yourself, you judge others.
Yeah.
Well, our time is coming to an end, and I want to respect your schedule, but is there anything else that you wanted to share? I know you have a great website and you're very active on Instagram.
Yeah, try to be. So all I would say, Julie, is if anybody wants to find me, they could find me at troyhadeed.com. They could find me on Instagram. I try to be really responsive. I try my best. But if someone has any questions or wants to reach out, they could find me there. I also have my own online platform, beyondyogatv.com. And I would just love to leave people with the insight that, we're all conditioning. We're all different experiences and different conditioning. And if we can start to see beyond our human identity, I wouldn't call it a lie, but from the day we're born, we're given a name and we're told that we are our bodies. And we're not. We're part of something so much bigger. And, to love, to really embody love, is to see God in every human being and every individual and every part of nature. And if we could do that, how much we would live our lives so much differently. And it's just about trying to see that divinity even in the darkest aspects of our society, or what appears as darkness. So I think that would be it for me, Julie. Yeah.
I agree that so much, because without darkness, we can't see the light. We need the contrast.
Yeah, there's actually light in darkness, and I truly believe that. There's absolutely light within the darkness. I mean, it all came out of darkness, right? If you go back to the beginning of creation, there was darkness, and everything was birthed out of darkness. A woman's womb is darkness. That's what we come out of. And I think light is born out of darkness.
I do too. Well, Troy, I just cherish this time with you, and thank you. I have such gratitude for your insight and your wisdom, and just very excited to share this.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Julie. It really is an honor, and I'll come back anytime you like. But love, thank you. Yeah, bye.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. As always, you can go to my website to comment, make requests, or check out past episodes. I have a wealth of information on my website at www.youneedapeptalk.com. So you're welcome to go there and connect with me. There's even a free video. It's an energy video I made for you guys if you want to sign up. Have a great day, and remember, each moment's a chance to live the life of your dreams. Take care.